if you've got all this like limitations and this self-doubt, you're going to have a catalyst in your life, right? You're going to have something that's going to happen that's going to start to change things for you. And then you're going to have to go on your own self-discovery. I mean, I love to get to people before the grit gets them, right? It's like, let me give you that before it comes after you, because I've lived through it. It's not fun. But I think in cases like that, we all have to let each other off the hook a little bit. And I think when people as an employee and they're like, well, I don't want to be you, or I don't want to, then it's like all you can do is say, here, you have the grace then to go be and go do who you are.
Hello and welcome to the Stroket Podcast. I'm Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be inspired to live your life fully, to take ownership of your time, your schedule, and your life, but most importantly, learn and grow and develop personally and professionally. Myself and others are going to share life lessons that we've learned through leadership, through heartache, through pain, through struggles, and we'll be sharing some success stories with you as well. Super eager for you to dive in, learn, and grow. And once again, just take ownership of your life today. Hello, and welcome to the Stroket Podcast. Jenny Townsend I'm your host. Today, I am here with Kathryn. She is a dynamic leader with over 2 decades of experience at the VP level in sales and marketing, where she honed in her expertise in driving growth, cultivating high-performance teams, and navigating complex transformations. Recognizing the need for more purpose-driven leadership, she founded the C Group, a cutting-edge consulting firm specializing in the foundation elements of executive presence, helping leaders show up powerfully and authentically in every single room. I'm super excited, Kathryn, to be talking with you. I know all of our listeners that are in leadership positions, running companies, CEOs are really going to benefit from today's conversation. I feel like as we're kicking off the new year, there's a lot of changes within business. You either have added some new team members, you've got rid of some team members. A lot of people are changing jobs. So I think today's conversation is going to be great. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we kick off with the podcast, I always love for our guests to share a little bit about them in addition to what I have just read. So tell us maybe what season of life you're in, where do you live, and things that we may connect with you about.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm in Seattle, and the season of life I'm in, I would say, is interesting. I did a podcast last week, and I was asked if you could title a book of the last 12 months of your life, what would it be? And so I thought that was such an interesting question, right? And my answer was like, holy shit, hang on. I just said a curse word, but it's kind of true. So my story at a high level is, I moved out here from New York. I'm in Seattle now, and had some family friends. So after college came here, had a very, strong trajectory in my career, and, was running lots of different teams, and, was responsible for sitting at the leadership table for a company that went through 2 M&As. And had a really strong corporate background, and I enjoyed that, but I think I was feeling through that. Well, 2 things. Number one, I was always obsessed with the personal development within my teams, and I really was more engaged with that than anything else. The marketing, the sales I was doing, I really was always focused on the people that I was running, right? And I also had, because of some things that had happened, growing up, I had this like inner misalignment that was happening. And so I remember being at like I was just got out of a meeting, and it was a big high stakes meeting, and I sat down and I was like, why do I feel like I'm so honored to have a seat at that table? I have this big house, this marriage, these 2 beautiful boys. Like, why do I feel so like unhappy? Everything in my life looked perfect on paper, but I just wasn't feeling fulfilled, I guess. And so I remember like Googling, is there such thing as like a life coach? And really back then, I don't know, this was like 6-7 years ago, it wasn't a big thing, right? I couldn't access, I didn't even know how to articulate it. I'm like, is that what I'm looking for? I'm not really sure. Well, this misalignment started to really creep up in my life, and I started to feel like I was just going down a path that wasn't meant for me. I'm like, the jobs, what I was doing, I was like, this doesn't feel like what I'm supposed to be doing. And I just got to a place where like I felt so unfulfilled that I kind of walked away from my entire life. So right before COVID, I walked out of my marriage, my house. I put myself in a huge timeout, moved into one of my rental properties, and spent years like deep into this like personal growth trajectory, started reading all the books, started going to the seminars, started taking courses, because I just felt like I wanted to be on a path that like my soul really resonated with. And it just became really clear to me that what I wanted to do was I wanted to help me 5 years ago, right? And that's where I was like, okay, I got to this place where I'm like, I got really clear on the story I was telling myself, which was not a story that I wanted to live out, right? I had like, you think 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, right? So it's like when you get really aware of what that inner conversation is and you realize that, if you look at the cybernetic loop, it's like, okay, so your belief system creates a thought, that thought creates a feeling. You start to embody that feeling with that thought, right? From that thought or from that feeling, you're going to take action, and that action is just going to be congruent with the original belief system. So you're going to see a loop in your life. And so what I noticed was my inner conversations were starting to materialize in me a belief pattern I had that I didn't even know that was running my life, right? We all operate off of paradigms. Like if you think about it, when you talk to people in your life, it's like, are you talking to the person or their program? Because by the time you're like 7 years old, right, you've got instilled in you programs that are the baseline for how the lens in which you view your life. So how you operate in work, how you operate at home, how you operate with your friends, it's all based off of a program. And so, what I really had to do is get deep into being like, what is the belief system I have that is now running my life? And that's why I'm making the decisions I make. That's why I feel the way I feel. It has nothing to do with anything external. And I think what I saw in my life was I was chasing, right? I was chasing the promotion. I was chasing the next car. I was chasing. And I finally was able to take it back and be like, no, 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 no. It has to happen as within. So with that, it's an inside job, right? And so I changed my life that way. I did all the work. I got to a place where I got really clear on, how it is I wanted, what I was here for, how I wanted to help people. And, with just a couple of things, I ended up creating this like 6-pillar program called the Impact Framework, where I take people through that, right? So it's like, if you want transformation, it starts from that, right? And then it's understanding what is the version of you want to reveal, because it's already within you. It's just how do we now break down what are the beliefs, break them down, take the armor off, get really clear on that version of you. What's the story you're telling yourself, and getting, crossing that bridge from where you are now to where you want to be. Because I think in this life, we've become so reactive and we sit in the passenger seat. And it's easy to do that because life is crazy, right? It's like you get up, you check your phone, your calendar, you're going, and you're letting everything outside of you kind of swing you around. And it's like when you have an inner alignment, then you can understand how to navigate that storm from a very different perspective. I'm working with someone right now whose company is going through a massive change. And it's been this conversation and I've seen such a change in her and her reaction to it, right? So it's like, this is happening for me, not to me. And when you get to that place, like, she's unsure what's going to happen with her role and all the things, right? But when you come at it with that true knowing that all this is happening for me, not to me. So how my response to that's going to be different, right? Now you're, excuse me, you're utilizing your parasympathetic nervous system, where all your clarity and your genius is. You're not coming from this fight or flight position where you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to hang on to this, and I'm going to I'm fighting. And it's like, no, if you have a piece about you, you can navigate things. You'll have more clarity in your head. Your super conscious is going to start to give you messages and give you light the path for you. So you move forward in certainty and you move forward in clarity, and whatever happens, whatever unfolds, you're going to be okay. And you're going to know how to navigate that. So really it's like, I think my passion is now, helping people so they don't wake up and go to work every day and feel unfulfilled and feel unhappy, because the tentacles of that impact the people that work for you, impact your children, impact your mindset, all the things. And it's like, I want to change the world one person at a time, right? But we can do that and live such a happier, more fulfilling life, and have peace at the end of the day. So
Yeah,
that's a big
I
long
love
title.
everything that you're saying. I definitely think that it is an inside job, but sometimes people don't actually take the time to do the inside work until there's like a death, divorce, or a health problem or something that arises like that you weren't really planning on before they do the work. And it's unfortunate that, those things have to happen before someone takes ownership of what they need and who they want to become as well. And then they want to make the transformation, and then they want it to happen instantly as well. So let's get right into talking about how we do that. I think it's super, super important. And I have had a lot of conversations. I actually just had a lady on my podcast like 2 or 3 weeks ago that basically sounds very similar to you, where she had the corporate job, had the beautiful house, had the marriage, had everything. And then she's like, one day I decided just to blow it all up and start fresh. And she's like, that was the best thing that I could have done for myself, because I was chasing another dream. I was chasing all these things. She's like, but I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even know really what even made me happy anymore. I thought having the house, having the family, having all the things was going to make me happy. And I really, really wasn't even happy. So when you start working with individuals and you start thinking about this transformation that wants to occur, do you dive down in to understand what actually makes them happy? And talk to us a little bit about that, because I feel like everybody wants to be happy. They think all the materialistic things are going to be that, or the
Right.
paycheck. And
Right.
that's really not it.
So I believe that, first of all, I think happiness is a choice. I think you have a choice every day to feel how you want to feel. So when you get empowered enough to take that back and say, okay, it's not this thing or this person that's making me feel anything, right? You got to like take your power back and be like, I have a choice in this life to feel however it is I want to feel, and give power to whatever is going to make me feel a certain way. You got to really understand what that dynamic looks like energetically. But I really believe that what you want is fulfillment, right? At the end of the day, you want these things because you think you're going to feel good in having them. You're going to feel fulfilled. So deep fulfillment and inner peace is what really is what the human experience, what people are striving for. So if you think about the expression, go with the flow, right? A lot of people talk about this and they say, oh, just go with the flow, go with the flow. And I think at a high level, people think it means just go and do what everybody else is doing. But really, what the real true meaning of go with the flow is where do you feel like when you are doing those things, you feel the most passion, you feel the most enjoyment, you feel like that's resonant to who you truly are. When you start to look at that on a day-to-day basis, and this was part of the reason why I even did this, why I opened up my studio, was because I was like, my passion is when I'm working with people and I'm seeing transformation in them. Like I'm starting to realize like that's what's resonant with who I truly am. And when you start to see like, oh, this is what lights me up. This is what's lights me up. That's like your soul trying to tell you like, here you go. This is who you are. That's your flow. And when you kind of go in that direction and you start to feel that fulfillment with what you're doing, then it's like everything starts to unravel for you. And like, that's the direction you're supposed to go in. So I do love to go. I love that exercise, working with people and them uncovering like, wait a second, this is like something that I didn't even realize like lights me up in a way that's different than anything else I'm doing. And it really can be, and at times it can show you a totally different path. It can totally change what you were, the trajectory of your life. Or it's just I need to make sure I'm incorporating this in my daily activities as a hobby, or, whatever that is. But I do think that's really important to figure out like, what is that for you, and there's different ways that you can do that. But I think it's key, we're not here to like sweat it out and grind it. That's just not what we were made for.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like so many of us were brought up that way, where it's like you had to hustle, you had to grind. The harder you're working, the better your future was going to be. And it's like you hear the saying, "Work smarter, not hard." But having that mind shift where you are working smarter and you can focus on yourself, because I think for me, like growing up, it was like there was never like focus on your mind, body, and spirit and go with the flow. It was like go for where the money is and work your ass off, and like that hustler mentality as well, which I think some of us are bred to, trying to have that mindset shift as well, and to be like, oh yes, I can be happy and still do what I love. That is possible, but sometimes I don't think that people believe that, or they don't realize that until after they've been at a career for 10, 20, and 30 years, where they see all the things that they have, but they don't really have that happiness or that belief system as well. So when you're talking about transformation, you're starting to work with clients. What are the first couple conversations or tips or tools or resources that you provide to get them to where they start to think and consider their belief system and to move forward for that transformation?
So there's a couple things I do. The I in my impact framework is identity alignment. So we really work on, okay, what is the version of you? Where are we today? And what do we want to reveal? Right. So we get really clear on that person that we want to be. And there's so many different ways that looks. And it's kind of funny because when you go through these transformational aspects, it's like, what does that have to do with executive presence? Well, that has everything to do with executive presence, because presence is the energetic conversation you're having without ever saying a word, right? It's the way that you inspire and influence, how you amplify your influence. But you don't do that by, when a lot of people say, oh, you have to have empathy or active listening, or, you have to dress a certain way. It's like, those are all byproducts of an internal transformation. Those are not sustainable as on their own. So when we start with identity alignment, what that really means is, what is the version of us that we really want to materialize, and what's in the way of that? And what's in the way of that usually is a belief system. And I'll give you an example. So if you look back at your life and you can find the earliest event in your life, right, that you can remember. So that changed the way you thought. So in my example, I have a memory, growing up, there was lots of different things, but my parents would fight a lot, right? They would fight over, my mom used to like to go to church. My dad had 4 kids. She would tithe the 10% of his salary. He didn't really like that. They argued about this. So my sister and I would crawl into bed together. We'd take a pillow, we'd hide it over our head, and we'd hum "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow" until they stopped screaming at each other. And when I think back on that, okay, so how did that experience at, I don't know, I must have been 6 or 7. How did that experience make me feel? Well, it made me feel scared, and it made me feel a little bit sad and unstable. What did that feeling, what did I start to believe about myself when I started to embody those feelings? Well, I started to believe about myself was that I was always going to wait for the other shoe to drop, and I felt a little bit unstable. That experience created that belief system in me. Okay. I didn't know this at the time, but now I look back, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. So what happens is, I started to believe about my life that, it was a little bit unstable. The other shoe was going to drop. And I didn't feel secure inside. Well, if I look at the loop in my life of like, okay, well, this is what I'm inviting in. Oh, because this is what I'm believing about my life. And I'm seeing it now play out because that's what I expect. So whatever you start to believe about yourself, that's what you start to expect in your life. And that's what's going to show up in your life. So it's really getting clear on what are the triggers that you have, because if you have a trigger or resistance in something, it's because you have a belief system that's not congruent with who you truly are. And how do we then cut the triggers, rewrite that narrative, and create and curate a message that we want to be telling ourselves, so that we can rewrite that moving forward, and you rewrite that belief system. That is the basis and the foundation of how you truly change the way that you think. I mean, it's deep work, but it's really necessary.
Right. So
Take it
what I'm wondering
about
is,
it. Oh, go ahead.
what I was going to ask you was, how honest, or how many sessions does it take to get people to be super, super honest with themselves, and then to speak this truth to you?
It's a good hour of really working through understanding how to do it. And then it's like, they usually it takes them a couple days to go. And if you're truly willing to get into this work and be like, okay, I really want to change. And I know that I need to change. I want to change. Then you gotta commit to like taking the time after and getting quiet and getting in a place and being like, where do I see triggers? Like, what are the things that really irritate me? And like, a trigger is an internal resistance, because there's something triggering you, because it's not congruent with who you truly are and what you want to believe about something. So that's a really good place to start. Like, why do I feel this way every time this person says this? I'm getting super triggered. It has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with your interpretation of what they're saying. So your interpretation and the meaning you're giving whatever they're saying is a conflict inside of you, because you're believing something about that. So it's really like you're breaking down all these things. It takes a little while. You can do the work in a couple of days. If you focus on 2 to 3 different things that you're realizing is showing up in your life consistently, and it's creating too much of a narrative in your approach to your work and approach to your life, like, and you really want to change it, you can get pretty clear on that. It doesn't take that long. It's got to be what your intention is with it, right? My intention right now is to get to the bottom of this and to change this and to understand it. Sometimes it's like your mind needs to logically understand it. And, our mind it's there to keep you safe, right? It's there to keep you alive. So it likes your triggers. It likes your resistance, because it puts you in a box, and it's like, oh, I know, I'm familiar with this. You have a trigger. We believe this. We're going to keep you right where you are. We're going to keep. So it's like, it's like, how do you break through that and have your own breakthrough to say, okay, I'm not going to allow this to to keep me small. I want to play big in my life, and I want to play, I want to be resonant with what I do. And I know I'm here to do something remarkable. And so, it's like when you start to break down those beliefs, it's like you're pulling off the armor of all the protection that you've put on your body through your whole life, and you're allowing like your true self to shine. And when you really get to that authenticity of yourself and you really understand, you know yourself, that's like, then your peace and your fulfillment comes into play. And it's such a more beautiful way to live than being all confined and with the armor and the, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I work with educators and musicians, and there's a lot of armor and there's a lot of, egos as well. But, there's a lot of, I know everything kind of mentality, or they're afraid to like break down the barriers or be vulnerable with each other and say, oh, I don't know how to do that as well. And then their belief system, in one way, it's like they're the best, but then they believe that they're not good enough as well. So it's a really, really dynamic work, especially within my workplace. And I was just working with a leadership team that we just dissolved, and I had so much belief in these individuals, and I wanted so much more for them. I thought they were so capable of so many things. And when it come down to it, they didn't want me to encourage them, to push them to, go to the next level. And they were just like, we don't want to grow. We don't want to be you. We don't want to be doing all of these things. And I was like, and a lot of it came to it is they didn't believe that they were capable, or like from what my other mentors and some coaches had said is that, Jenny, you can't believe in them more than they believe in themselves. And that's really hard as a leader to hear. And obviously you don't want to ever give up on anyone, because if you give up on them, then what are they going to be working for or towards? And so I don't know if you have anything to mention about that as far as like self-belief, as far as, working with those individuals.
yeah, I mean, I think that advice is true, right? You can't, if you believe in someone more than they believe in themselves, and maybe that's their catalyst, right? Maybe I think we all get to a place when you get, if you've got all this like limitations and this self-doubt, you're going to have a catalyst in your life, right? You're going to have something that's going to happen that's going to start to change things for you. And then you're going to have to go on your own self-discovery. I mean, I love to get to people before the grit gets them, right? It's like, let me give you that before it comes after you, because I've lived through it. It's not fun. But I think in cases like that, we all have to let each other off the hook a little bit. And I think when people as an employee and they're like, well, I don't want to be you, or I don't want to, then it's like all you can do is say, here, you have the grace then to go be and go do who you are, but you already, what you need for your, for your business and your life. And you have, then you just create those boundaries, and you gracefully just separate that, you let that relationship go. And I think people are scared to do that because they feel like, oh, I just gotta, I gotta help grow them, or I gotta, but there's sometimes you will reach a limit.
Are you looking to enhance your relationship with yourself? If so, get the Stroket Guide. My book is available on Amazon and on my website. Not only is my book going to help you with your personal journey with yourself, but it's also going to help you with the relationships of other stakeholders in your life. For instance, your spouse or partner, your employer, your employees, your friends, or your family members. And of course, because the title, there is a chapter for your pleasure, which is the last one, in the bedroom. The book offers lots of great tools and resources. There's a lot of great downloads, and it features many of my podcast guests, and they have thousands of downloads and resources that are worth a lot of money. So you're going to want to get my book today. You can buy that on Amazon or on my website, and you can change and take ownership of your life today with one simple click.
And that's okay, because sometimes it's the best thing for them. So, if you make this hard decision where you have to dissolve a team and you're like, but they were so great and they were this, but this is, and your intuition is telling you this is the right way to go, then that's just part of the journey. It's part of your journey. It's part of their journey, and it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to give a little bit of grace with that.
So when you're working on the self-discovery and the self-belief, are you working with them as far as emotional intelligence as well? So or they're more self-aware as well too?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's different components to that from an emotional perspective, but it's when you start dealing with the root of a belief system, and you realize what that materializes, and you say, okay, so now I've identified 2 or 3 beliefs that have been limiting me. And, let's go back to the identity that I want to, that I really want to materialize, right? Then we walk through So from there, we walk through like the mindset mastery, the authentic communication, the persona identification. I do this thing too, where I work with the Purpose Company. I'm one of their licensed facilitators for this assessment, right? So this assessment is a 20-minute assessment, and it's very scientific based, and companies like the government, parts of the government have used it, parts of, major car dealers use it. It's a very, it's an interesting, they've been working on this thing for 10 years, right? So basically it's these randomized questions, but what it pops out what your really truly purpose, what your purpose is. It gives you a one-liner, puts four different quadrants in there. And what it allows you to do is take that, and then it's a good baseline for you to be like, okay, based on this is my natural advantage, right? This is what I'm here for. So where in my life can I see, based on these parts of my personality, like how do I take this then and make sure I'm connecting it to my purpose at work? How am I using this to make sure that I'm living in my purpose at home? It's a directional guide. So there's a lot of emotional intelligence that comes out of that, because it really does give you a foundation of an understanding of why you think the way you think. And I think it's good for people to be like, oh, okay, now I have this baseline. So now I know this is what my natural advantage is. I'm a messenger. So my natural advantage is to take a message and spread it. It's exactly what I'm doing, right? So it's funny, when I took it, I was like, oh, wow, this is very spot on for who I am. And it's just fascinating. But there's lots of tools out there that can guide us through this, right? That can really take you, and it doesn't have to take that long. Like my whole thing is, I'm like, it took me 5 years. I want to give it to you in like 6 weeks, right? Like I want to truncate that. So you don't have to go and, I'm taking everything I got, giving it to you. So it's a little bit easier.
So are you seeing transformations happen within 6 weeks or so?
Yeah. You start to think totally different. So once I get somebody to totally start thinking differently, then I'm like, okay, you're on the right road. You will start to change your life if you can start to change the way that you think, and you understand what a trigger is, when you understand why you have internal resistance. Yes, you can totally start to change that. But you have to be sustainable. So what I usually do too is, it has to be sustainable. So I have I'll do a container, right? So you have like an hour of coaching, and then open office hours. So like, okay, I'm working on this stuff. Like I need to come in, and like, this is for group corporate programs that I do. So they'll come in an open office hour, and with questions, and then there's a private Facebook group. So it's like they can ask, they can like start working with each other on things. And then, you start to network and build community around everybody working on the same thing, and you have each other, right? And like my whole goal is to like create these pods of people who can like continue to work together and keep each other accountable, because it's easy then to, you might understand and be aware of the work, but then you wake up one day and like the shit hits the fan, and you forget everything that, you learned. And that will happen. It happens to me, right? And it's like, no, I got to get reset. I got to get back on the horse. I got to get back on the horse. And then, then you can get everything, you just have that internal alignment starts to come back into play, and you start to get more clear again. So
when people are having this belief system changed, when they're making these transformations, I mean, I'm assuming they're happier, they're more fulfilled, they have more purpose. Are they changing jobs, changing marriages, staying married? Like, what's been some of the wins for some of the clients that you've worked with that have followed these transformation protocols and what you've designed?
So I've had I had one woman I worked with who she didn't make a big change in her life, but her business started to change. She's an entrepreneur, and she started to see more success in her business because she was connecting with her clients differently. So she was like, oh, okay. She goes, I think I understand that I probably was having a little bit of a block because I wasn't internally connected. So she figured out how to have a different dynamic with the people she was working with. And so she saw leaps and bounds in her business that she was generating. I worked with another guy who's he's in the speaking world. And he's like, I never thought about how I show up. And I never thought how the way that how I amplify my influence is tied to my thought process. That's the biggest thing that I think people are starting to understand, is like, how I'm showing up is tied to what I think. And it's not what I thought. It's like you think executive presence and you think about your presence, and it's not, a lot of it is because companies will come and they'll pay for it for their employees, but you're the leader of your own life, right? It's not just for executives, it's for people. It's for, if you are having a human experience, you will, inevitably be running off of a program. Like that's the bottom line, right? So So I think the biggest transformation I see is not necessarily that people blow up their lives. It's that they are able to understand how to navigate it with more clarity. And that kind of clarity and having, more innovative ideas, like this other person I'm dealing with this job change right now, well, this organizational change, she said to me the other day, she goes, I can't believe I'm looking at this so differently. Like, I'm not sitting in a corner crying because I feel like that's the old me. I would have done that. And now I'm looking at this going, I'm excited. And if this change happens, I'm actually excited about the new possibilities for myself, right? Like, and that's a transformation. It's a change in how you think that is an excitement for life. And that you're on the right path no matter what happens to you. And that's really the big change that I've seen. Like I said, I haven't seen people blow up their lives, but you don't have to blow up your life, right? You just have to
Yeah.
change the way
I
you
mean,
think
it's really
about
just learning how to navigate it, as you said, as well. And so much too is how we show up, and our energy is so strong, and depending on our thoughts and what's going on in our lives. And, we had this in our company last year. We had a lot of people that were just overwhelmed, exhausted, and were going through a lot of stuff personally. And the leadership team really impacted the rest of the organization. And a lot of that negativity and a lot of those thought processes and just lack of desire or fulfillment within their careers and jobs like bled into other people, where it's like everything is coming out now. We're having to do some major shifts and implement a lot of different things to kind of reboost and energize our team members as well. So another thing I wanted to ask you was talk about employer. If we could kind of get into that a little bit, and if you could talk a little bit about the energetic conversation that we could be having as leaders or as employers that are going to create higher beliefs and transformation within the companies, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the most underserved vertical in corporate companies are people who manage people. So if you think about bosses and managers and CEOs, it's like you get to a certain level because you're really good at what you do. And but the biggest responsibility that you're going to have is the responsibility to govern other people, right? Because if you think about that, that is you're as good as the people you have rolling up to you. So when you're coming from a program that doesn't serve you and doesn't serve other people, and you are unable to lead authentically and be able to inspire in the right way that actually activates your people, then you create a very toxic environment. And I've seen this play out. There was one situation I witnessed that was basically tore down half the organization. It's very toxic, right? So I think as employers, the best thing you can do is understand if you can't get in and do all the work that you need, from your own internal transformation, it's like understanding what lights your people up, right? Like, what is it? It's not, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, it's simple. It's not overly complicated, but when you really lean into like understanding what it is that lights your employees up and how they can create what's a path for them that they feel like they have purpose coming in every day, so that they'll walk through a wall for you, that they don't look at you. They don't look at this as a job. They look at this as their purpose, right? Like, how do they then look at this and say, I'm coming in every day because I believe in what I'm doing and I want this, like I believe in supporting this person. Like it's a shift in the mindset and how there's so many people will show up and they operate from a governing perspective, like waiting for that person to screw up, right? Like you have a 90-day review. You just started. In 90 days, we're going to decide if you're good enough to be here. And it's like, why do we do that? You're just setting this person up for like this anxiety every day and like trying to you made the decision to hire them. Well, then support that decision and be like, no, like change that framework. So there's, I think, different ways where we can empower the people that work for us so that they have the opportunity to be more innovative, that they can see things and bring them to you and be like, hey, this, can we just change the conversation internally to really empower that culture. And that work output changes. It just does, right? But we don't think that way as employers, right? We go in, and I was kind of, even early on in my management career, like I was not, I was very much like, I've got a number I got to hit. My team has to do this. And it was like, it took me, when I went through my own like transformation, I realized like that I don't want to be managed that way. Like what would have lit me up, right? If somebody, when you think about that, and it's a very human thing, right? When someone sees you and they see what are the things that inspire you, and they know, they know about your life, it's like, yeah, I'm going to come in with a different perspective on that. So I don't know. I just think that's like I said, a very underserved vertical in terms of this.
Yeah, I mean, within our company, I spend the last 3 months, and I need to be doing this all year long, but I spend the last 3 months of the year running our coffee and conversation, which is like an hour together. We bring everybody around the table, and it's all levels, everybody that works for our organization, where we talk about goal setting. We talk about what we're grateful for, what do we bring to the table. And the whole what do you bring to the table can be challenging for some people to write like some of their strengths, but we go around the table and everybody else kind of says, "Oh, I value that you do this, and I love that you do this." And it's a great little morale booster. And then I have our companies pick a word for the year that we can all be aligned with and kind of all lean with. And then I have them do it personally. And then we do focus wheels. And then this past year, I had them identify what their why is. Like, why are they coming to work? What is their purpose? Why are they showing up? Because I want them to understand too, it's like they're coming to work to serve the mission and to serve our students, but it's also serving them as well. But it's going to fuel their future, and it's going to fund like whatever they want to do in the future. And then what's the one thing they want to accomplish this year where they're going to have a level of success? And we've done a lot of that. I don't know if you have anything
Kind
to
of
say to
feedback.
any of that.
Yeah. What kind of feedback do you get from that exercise?
Well, first of all, everyone put their whys and their one thing on our whiteboard in our break room so that we all can kind of cheerlead and support. We can say, "Oh, hey, how's it going with recording that song?" And like that way we can connect with each other on a more of a personal level. So everyone put their stuff on the wall, but I don't know if it's really making an impact. I don't know if it's actually boosting things. These are all things that I've been trying to do to help our people grow personally, but I don't know if it's really making that much of an impact. I would love to say yes, it is, but I would love to know what your perspective on it, or if you have other suggestions for us CEOs and leaders that are listening that would empower our people as well.
I mean, I love things like that, right? When you get everybody together and, if it's, and you have everybody participating, I would just say do it more frequently and see if that changes things. Why are you just doing that once a year? It's like these resolutions and like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then you just fall into the same pattern because the reason why the behavior doesn't change is because the thinking doesn't change. And the thinking has to change with repetitiveness and, and an understanding of that. So I would say if you're seeing success with that initially, right? If you do that and everyone's like all inspired and excited, and then they just go back to their day to day, it's like, no, that's never going to change. That's just going to be like a lot of time you guys spent feeling good for a couple hours. But if you make that a regular habit and then you kind of track that, like, okay, what is your why? Okay, this is why you show up every day. Okay, so what can we do then to lean into that and give you more of that? So you're leaning into your why more and more and more. Like, how can I change the way your day is structured so you have a hook in that, on a weekly basis, right? Like, make it like bridge that gap for them. So then they're like, oh wow, like that person just really listened to me and leaned into me and like is bringing me, and they're going to like put that hook on that. And they're going to be more excited to come into work every day because they're going to feel seen.
Right.
So
Right.
I just think that consistency on stuff like that is really important.
Yeah. What other ways would you encourage employers and CEOs to empower their team members to where they have a stronger belief or they can actually be transformed?
So I love starting with the onboarding process. I think onboarding is so important. You've hired a new employee. So everything you do from those first few weeks are going to play a massive role in how that person feels energetically with your company and how they show up every day. So like I worked with this company where we restructured their onboarding process where they came in and they first thing that we did was we had them fill out like a little survey that was all about personal information that they wanted to share. So like where do you like to travel? Like who are your kids, all these things. So when they came into work their first day, on their desk, their laptop was a screensaver of the place that they like to go to in Lake Como, right? There was a quote from one of their favorite books that they read. There was, a little picture frame because they liked photos of their kids that they could put into the picture frame. It was very much like they walked in, it was like, oh my God, like I feel so seen. I feel so like, it felt so personal. And in the first couple of weeks, it was, the one-on-one needs to be completely deconstructed. I have such opinions about this, but one of them is like, okay, well, we're going to talk about work and so forth, but you know what? We're going to go and just have lunch. I want to just get to know you as a person, right? Like, so it became I mean, if you think about what COVID did for the work environment, COVID allowed it used to be so compartmentalized. You're your work person and you're your home person. And then we had Zoom calls where like, look at, you're seeing me in my home office, right? Like you see people in their bedrooms, like their cats walking across, like the barriers became very gray. And so it's like the shift in terms of like, who is the whole person? So it's like, how do you encourage the whole person to show up at work and not make them feel compartmentalized? Because when they can show up as their whole selves and not feel like when they walk in the door, they're hanging up their work self, they're picking up their, that's a dissonance that happens, and then a fragmentation in your internal operating system. And we weren't made for that, right? So it's like, how do you look at this person and say, how can I support you better for being an employee? And maybe it means that, this whole like return to office 5 days a week. I just think this is all like I think we're going backwards from that perspective. I think people need to be empowered to do what they want, what they need to do in the way that works for them, right? It's like the education system. I watch like how we teach. It's like we have kids that learn all different ways. Like if we were able to like have a little bit of flexibility in the classroom and allowed kids to learn the way that they are created to learn, instead of standardized test scores, and you're not reading at a third grade level. And it's like, all that's bullshit. It's just like, but I know that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But
Well, I love that you're saying that because we do a get to know me form. Like that's what they fill out on the onboard process, but they fill it out. And it's like I may, or our HR people may look at it in the future. Like if someone does something really good, we're like, oh, we'll run out and get them their coffee. But it's not something that we take to the level that you're talking about. And I really love that advice. And I think that that is an area of improvement. I know for our company and for our connection with those employees to where they do feel like they're being seen, they're being heard. And I think a lot of times that's what employees want, right? So I really value that tip.
about that. Like, think if they have a bad conversation, if they had like a meeting that didn't go well, or something happened at work and they are frustrated, and then they sit back down at their chair and then they look at the computer and they look at the quote and they're like, okay, it's like, I had a bad day, but I'm good. You know what I mean? There's a connection there that they feel with the company that's like, okay, I can navigate this. It was shitty, but I feel seen here. And even if they're not articulating that, like subconsciously, definitely that message is pretty clear.
Yeah, I definitely love that. So creating that awareness too is really, really important. So if we were talking about creating awareness within our workplace and the belief system and transformation, all that, what would be like a tip or two you would suggest?
I would say just get started with like the story you're telling yourself, right? So I think the easiest way to get started with all this work is to say, okay, if I'm having an inner conversation, right? Like there's an inner conversation that we're all having. Well, if you look at on a day-to-day basis, 90% of the story you're going to tell yourself today, that inner conversation is going to be there again tomorrow. And this is why people get stuck, right? Because they tell themselves the same story, the same story, the same story. And then you have the same life, the same life, the same life. So it's like, if you can start to get really clear and then separate that conversation and know that it's like, okay, this is what's being told to me, but I have to be an observer of that. That's not who I am. I'm just going to observe the conversation that's happening in my head. And then when you start realizing, especially like when you're driving, those thoughts that you're having in your head are starting to create a way that you feel. So then if you can like separate that feeling from the thoughts in your head, and you can isolate them and say, okay, that's how you start. That's how you start. What's the conversation? And how is it that, what's it making me feel? I'm so sorry. There's somebody
Yeah.
at my door.
Oh my gosh, no worries. No worries.
Pause really quick.
Okay. Yeah.
Give me 1 second. My goodness, I'm really sorry about that.
No, that's totally cool. So, anyways, so I just want to say I really appreciate all the value that you had and that you added today as well. I think it was super, super impactful. And I think that everybody could benefit from doing the self work and changing their belief system. And I had to do this several years ago when I went through everything with my husband as well. I had, I was just, my company was everything. And then it was like, okay, wait, there's more to me than just my company. And there's more to me than just my marriage. And it was like, okay, who am I? Who do I want to become? What are my values? What do I see myself as, other than just being the owner of this company as well, and just the workforce and like the bulldog and all those things of all the adjectives that people had given me based on my work ethic. So I think that this work is super, super powerful. And I think you can definitely transform your life and transform your relationships and your future by doing it. So if you had anything that you would like to suggest or encourage any of our listeners to do that could help them with the transformation or changing that belief system, what would be the one thing they could implement either today or tomorrow?
I would say get really clear, have clarity on what it is what you want your life to look like. Okay. So it's like, okay, I'm living this life. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that. I know I'm made for more. Get super clear on that person, who that person is. And then, start to look at the things that one of the exercise we do, this is a quick thing. One of the exercise we do is we say, okay, so this is me now. This is who I want to reveal within myself. So what are the differences between the version of me now and the version of me then, right? What are the things that I need to stop doing? And what are the things I need to start doing? And, looking at that list, but it really starts with the clarity. You got to have the clarity, of what that end result looks like. And then from there, we can do all the other work. But I think just, starting getting really clear is a really good place to start.
Yeah, I love that. Kathryn, you're amazing. So if anybody is listening today and they're like, I'm ready to change my life and my mindset and my belief system, how can they connect with you? I want you to tell us too, you have a book coming out. Let us know how we can get that as well.
Yeah, so I am writing, I actually just finished a chapter in a book called The Unstoppable Woman that's going to be out, I believe in September, and then another one for She Glows coming out in August or in April. But my book is just called Your Presence is Your Power. And that will hopefully be out in the next 3-4 months. I'm still working on that. But if you wanted to get in touch with me, so my website is the C Group Studio, and it's the letter C. And then, or Kathryn at thecgroupstudio.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn and on Instagram. You can find me at the C Group Studio. So
awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to be following you for tips and tricks and inspiration as well. I want to appreciate you. I want to say thank you for being here today with us. And for all of our listeners, I want to encourage you to share this podcast with 5 people that you may think could benefit from it, or they may know someone as well. I think Kathryn has a lot of great value to share. I know she was an inspiration to me today. And I think what she is putting out there is super, super powerful. And I don't think I know. I said think twice. And I'm like, I know this. I don't know why I'm saying I think this. So anyway, so please share this podcast with 5 of your friends. Connect with Kathryn on Instagram or LinkedIn. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, and I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning into the Stroket Podcast. I hope you were inspired. I hope you're willing and ready to take some action. I want to encourage you to consider 5 people that could benefit from today's podcast. Super simple to share this episode. You never know who could benefit from hearing this podcast and how you could inspire them to create the change in the life that they're wanting. Cheers, and thank you so much for tuning in. Also, consider giving a review.